You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am Brian Call, and I am joined here in studio by Brad Hunt. Today, we're going to talk about sugar and how it's killing you. And recently, a podcast was published by Andrew Huberman, and his guest was Dr. Robert Lustig. And on that podcast, it's got 1 million views now. It's been out for about 2 weeks. I highly recommend you go check it out, although it's a 3.5 hour investment.
Buckle in, because it's long.
And
it's worth it, I think.
Yeah. And so what I did, I listened to it a couple of times because I just was trying to dial in my fitness as always. And I decided I was going to grab a few clips and touch on a few pieces of the show because I think it's really beneficial to our audience.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. First off, sugar is killing you. If you're consuming a lot of fructose, you're in a bad way.
Yes.
And we're going to keep this as quick and concise as possible. Basically, fructose is a sweet molecule. Like you hear it in high fructose corn syrup. It's in fruit. And then there's glucose. These are both carbohydrates. Okay. You got proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Those are your macronutrients. Okay. You know what protein is, you know what fats are. On the glucose side, you have fructose and glucose. The body actually makes glucose. Mm-hmm. So if you don't consume carbohydrates, the body can convert various proteins, and through other processes in the body can create glucose. So the body, that's how critical it is, that the body's going to make it whether you're eating carbohydrates or not. It has a process for creating it. So the thing is, though, glucose and fructose are not the same thing. Mm-mm. Fructose is completely vestigial, as Dr. Lustig put it. It's something you don't need at all. You don't need fructose at all. In fact, it's like alcohol. There's no actual bodily survival.
There's zero benefit to intaking it.
Yeah. You don't need it.
Nope.
Glucose, you do. Okay. Right. So I just want to make that clear. There are these two molecules, right? Now, Andrew Huberman asked this question because one of the first things he asked was, okay, I'm a little bit worried about berries. He's like, I like my blueberries, my strawberries, my raspberries. I like my berries. You know, I know it's got fructose in it. Apples do, blah, blah, blah. And so he asked this question, and this is the clip.
Diet is replete with it. In fact, our fructose consumption's gone up 25-fold since the beginning of the last century.
I have to ask this now. I eat lots of blueberries, strawberries, blackberries if they're in season. Mm-hmm. I love them.
No problem.
Loaded with fructose?
No.
Plenty of fiber. Low fructose?
Low fructose. Okay. In berries are the lowest fructose of all the different fruits.
I was so worried about asking you this today.
Not
Thank you. Okay.
And fruit is okay because of the fiber. So the molecule, the fructose molecule is the same, whether it's in a berry or in a banana or, for that matter, in a Coca-Cola. The fructose molecule is the same molecule. The difference is that in the berry, it comes with a whole lot of fiber. In the banana, it comes with a whole lot less fiber. And in the Coca-Cola, it doesn't come with any fiber. And the fiber is what mitigates the absorption. So when you consume the fructose with fiber, so your blueberries, you're feeding your microbiome. That fructose wasn't for you.
So like Dr. Lustig said, when you eat foods that have a lot of fiber in them, you're not impacted by the fructose in the same way as you would when it's been extracted, when the fiber is not present. And this is going to be key because we're going to get into this a little bit later, the importance of your gut and your gut health and what's going on there. But fruit's all good. Veggies, all good. We're going to get into that in a minute. So he mentioned there's a 25x increase in fructose consumption in the last century.
Which is crazy.
So if you look back, if you look at sort of more native and aboriginal and earlier populations, human beings have not been consuming this level of sugar for centuries, since the dawn of time. You know, and so here we are in the last 100 years, a 25x increase in our sugar intake. So what's that doing to us? It's not good. It's really bad. So why is it bad? That's the question. Brad, do you know why it's bad?
I don't know why it's that bad, but I just know I don't eat very much of it. Like I try and limit that because I'm the same as Ryan. I notice the inflammation. Like when I take in some sugars, you know, it's not as bad when I'm being super active on the hunt, but when I take in bad sugars or the fructose, it crushes me. After 2 knee surgeries, bad ankle from breaking it, broken bones, I notice those injuries really flare up. I've
been working out a lot, doing a lot of different workouts that but the volume has been pretty high. I've been pretty sore lately. The body's kind of coping.
Right.
And I've been keeping my carbohydrate intake low, and the carbs that I have been eating have been a lot of fruits and vegetables, white rice, some things that I know I do well on. Then the other day after a heavy workout, I pounded some ice cream, some chocolates. I had some chips.
The good stuff.
I had processed garbage. I basically went to town. I had some cake and some berries. So it was not good. And I consumed all of that. And I woke up the next day and I was telling Brad, I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, for weeks I've been doing great. And all of a sudden, like everything was sore. The only difference was the vast intake of trash and sugar that I had consumed. And that was like, and I didn't exercise that one day. And man, did I get majorly stoved up. It was not good. So we know that it has a negative impact, but why? So that's something I thought was really well explained on this show. And what he said was fructose inhibits 3 separate enzymes for normal mitochondrial function. Okay. Inhibits 3 separate enzymes for normal mitochondrial function. Metabolic health is mitochondrial function. That's what it is. You could say optimal metabolic health is the peak efficiency of mitochondrial function. So lately I've been listening to Peter Attia and some other Rhonda Patrick and some other sort of MDs, doctors on the subject of optimal health, metabolic health. And I think that's, one of the things that has been brought up many times, and admittedly, I'm just a novice here. They talk about mitochondrial health. Mitochondrial health is like that metabolic health. So how good is your cell regeneration, the oxygen transfer, the energy transfer to your muscles
for recovery and all
this other kind of stuff. Your mitochondria, I mean, I carry something like ATP, which is an energy, some sort of energy. I don't really care. I just wanted to know and kind of on a high level understand it. The more mitochondria that you have and the better functioning it is, the more your VO2 max is higher, the more you can, cardiovascular system.
Rate of recovery is so much quicker.
It's quicker. So it matters, right? At this cellular level of the mitochondria. And so he talks about it in this clip, and I'm going to play that for you right here.
Now I know that fruit is okay, especially if the fruit has a lot of fiber.
Yeah.
But fructose itself, especially if it's not partnered with fiber, is, first of all, not required for survival at all, but you're telling me is problematic.
Yeah, and let me tell you why it's problematic. We haven't gotten to that yet. We're just talking about whether it's vestigial versus needed. Now, let's talk about what fructose does. Turns out, fructose inhibits 3 separate enzymes necessary for normal mitochondrial function.
It turns out that fructose inhibits 3 enzymes responsible for normal mitochondrial function. So the next question is, what did I just say? Well, listen to this clip as Dr. Lustig explains it.
We have this thing called food science, we have this thing called nutrition, and we have this thing called metabolic health. They are not the same. Food science is what happens to food between the ground and the mouth. Nutrition is what happens to food between the mouth and the cell. Metabolic health is what happens to food inside the cell. But all of the chronic diseases that we are suffering from, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia, cardiovascular disease, cancer, dementia, fatty liver disease, polycystic ovarian disease, those 8 diseases, which make up 75% of healthcare expenditures in this country today, are all inside the cell because they are all mitochondrial dysfunction. And there is no medicine that gets to the mitochondria.
Interesting.
Yeah. So as he explains it, you can see that all the important things about your health and your longevity and avoiding all the major diseases. What do you say? 75% of the deaths in America by one of these diseases.
8 diseases or whatever.
Yeah. They're all to do with the mitochondria and how healthy the mitochondria are. And like you said, it's inside the cell. You've got, like you said, food science from the ground to mouth. Nutrition is mouth to cell.
Yep.
Right. And then the third one, metabolic health, that impacts what's inside the cell.
Right.
Then you have food processing inside the cell. That is called the metabolic health. Okay. So if you want to get more details, you can go and listen to the 3.5 hour show. But just know that fructose is inhibiting those enzymes that are necessary for this critical level of mitochondrial health or metabolic health. Okay. So, which is the preventer of all the disease that you can, that's out there for us to get. Okay. So it's important. So why is fructose doing this to us? What is it about it that we know that it's causing this problem? It's inhibiting these enzymes. But what does it mean after that? Like, how is it bringing about the diseases in our body? Well, he gets into that a little bit more. One of the questions that Andrew asked, and this is from another clip, and I'm going to play that for you now. His question was, how serious is this? Okay, it's got 3 enzymes. It's inhibiting, normal mitochondrial function, impacting metabolic health, but how serious is it? And he's basically referring to all the sugar intake, going to McDonald's, all the processed foods, all the sugar. How bad is it?
Did you know that the U.S. consumes 57 pounds per adult, 57 pounds of sugar on average per year, which is insane.
Yes,
insane to me.
How significant is this for obesity, for mitochondrial function in vivo in us?
All right, so look. The dose determines the poison. So it's not what you do one day that kills you. It's what you do every day that kills you. And if you basically eat ultra-processed food, high in sugar, for 10 years in a row, it's going to show up in terms of your comorbidities. And ultimately, it will kill you. And we have the data to show, how many years you will lose. So right now in America, we pay an 8-year longevity tax. If you look at Japan, who they have a mean age of death of 88. We have a mean age of 80. Okay, we're paying an 8-year longevity tax just by living here. And we're talking about the healthy people. Now, if you have metabolic syndrome, it's a 15-year longevity tax. And if you have obesity, it's a 15-year longevity tax. And if you have metabolic syndrome, it's a 20-year longevity tax.
So basically, it's like you got 8 years, healthy to healthy individual, of more life if you're living in Japan than you do here. It's 15 years if you're a little bit fat, which almost all Americans are have entered the area of obesity. It doesn't take much to be on the obesity scale.
No.
But then it's 20 years if you have any of these metabolic syndromes, like you mentioned earlier. You have heart disease, you have diabetes, all of these sort of metabolic diseases. If you have that, and since most Americans actually have metabolic disease, they're living 20 years longer than us. If I'm understanding that right, the average sort of healthy Japanese person is living about 20 years longer than most out of shape fat Americans.
Correct. Yeah.
That's
life's too short already.
The thing is if you're just losing 20 years off your life, Okay. That's one thing. But if you succumb due to one of these metabolic diseases or obesity, then you've got to ask yourself, okay, what quality of life
exactly
did you lose early in that process? Because it's not like you just have your heart attack overnight.
Right. I mean, I look back at high school days, and when like a lot of my friends had older parents. I was lucky. My dad was in his 40s, and he was in shape. And so and my buddies, their parents were not, in a way. Not all of them, but some of them. And I look and see what their parents did with their kids. Yeah. And it was not near like my dad did with me. And so like for me right now with 3 boys, I'm I stay healthy to keep up with them in 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. You know, my oldest is 10 now.
Be a good father.
I want to be a good father
and provide, preside over your family. There's a
kick
sense of
their butt in
responsibility.
basketball, football till I'm 50, 60, 70.
Yeah. No question about it. And it matters. It matters. Your fitness and your health matters. So I'm sort of advocating not just longevity, living longer, but also thriving during those extended years.
Absolutely.
And I just go back to, wow, if you're 20 years shorter than an average Japanese person, did you know that in Japan there's over 85,000 people over 100 years old in Japan?
Right. Sheesh. And we don't have that in the U.S.
No.
That's for sure. Not even close.
Well, their population is about 40% or 30% of our nation.
Yeah, right.
I'd be curious. I don't know how many per capita there is, but I already know from the other statistics that America's not winning. A little
more healthy.
We're not winning on the health, and this is, and there's a reason why. And Lustig talks about this in the podcast. I'm not planning on getting into it too deep today, but he talks about the food industry, big pharma, and big ag, and what they're doing and why they're motivated to, poison us, basically.
Right, basically.
One of the things that he mentions, and we'll get into it later, is that 75% of the food in the grocery store is consumable poison.
Yeah.
As he calls it. And we'll get into this a little bit later. But the way he talks about it, it's like this. An associate, another doctor, friend of his, put together a food scale, a rating system to determine what food is, good for you and how much food is too processed and having a negative impact on you. Okay. And they did some studies and they created some guidelines. Okay. So one of the ways to do the math on this is, he called it NOVA, NOVA 1, NOVA 2, NOVA 3, NOVA 4 on this rating system he has. It's a scale. NOVA 1 is an apple. Right, you pick it off the tree and you ate it. Nothing's been done to it. Organic. It's just an apple.
Right.
Okay. Nova 2. Okay, it's apple slices. They picked it off the tree, but then they cut it up in some machine or factory. They add a little bit of salt or something to it so it doesn't turn brown.
Right.
They might have peeled the skin off. There's a little preservative in there. That's Nova 2. Okay. Nova 3 is like Mott's applesauce.
Right.
Okay, they took the apple,
processed it down.
They processed it down into, applesauce. They've added sugar and fructose and other things to it, a few other things, but it's essentially applesauce. Okay. And number 4, Nova 4,
straight poison out of a bucket or what?
It's the apple pie at McDonald's. Okay,
which probably doesn't consume much apple.
So is it even got real apple in it at all? Okay. So there's your Nova 1, 2, 3, 4. Apple, apple slices, apple sauce, and the full on big kahuna,
your treat,
your chemical, your sugar. It's just sugar and apple flavoring.
Yeah.
Okay. He talked about, in the grocery store, 75% of what is available to us in the grocery store, the common grocery store, is Nova 4.
Wow.
75% of what's in there is Nova 4. It is on that scale.
Yep.
It is completely processed.
It's like poison.
Nova 1, 2, 3 makes up the other 25% of the grocery store. Okay.
Not good.
So if you're buying milk and eggs and fish and apples and lettuce and kale, like your Nova 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Right. even if you're buying, and I don't recommend it, but some applesauce and some other more processed type things, you're still in that Nova 1, 2, 3 category. Yep. Only 25% of the store is that stuff.
Well, I mean, I walked through Walmart this morning, and I just, for some reason in my head, before we even knew we were doing this podcast, and I was walking down the aisle, and I'm like, fruit snacks, crackers, just all this processed stuff that I'm like, I look at my kids, and I'm not perfect by any means. And I've noticed when they eat that stuff, especially at a high level, their attitudes totally change. Where when they're not on that stuff. And I'm like, man, there's so many people, like, there's not very many fit people in there.
That's a good segue into the next part. Why is it doing this? What is the mechanism at play? And we're gonna get into that. Here, let's play this next clip.
When you ingest glucose, you're getting a big glucose excursion in your bloodstream. So you're getting a big glucose spike. And that glucose spike has to come down. Well, what makes it come down? The hormone insulin. Insulin is the bad guy in this story. The higher your glucose goes, the more your pancreas will release insulin in order to bring that glucose down.
I've mentioned this before on the podcast. When you're consuming all that sugar, you have an insulin response. That insulin response turns out that it has a lot of negative side effects. Insulin is the fat storing hormone. And it is, when you spike your system with sugar, it's got to come in and it's got to process that and it's got to store it. Okay. Right. It stores it as fat in the body, and it does it. How quickly do you think, if you eat a piece of cake, Brad, about how quickly before it converts it into fat?
I bet it starts right away within 15, 20 minutes.
It'll be done in 90 minutes.
90 minutes, done.
Wow. It's fat.
Yeah.
Your sugar just turned to fat in 90 minutes.
It's hard to do even a workout.
Now, that's if you're not moving. Right. Now, it completely gets negated to a degree if you're active. Okay. Climbing a mountain, hiking, running, doing something else. Yep. Or post-workout, then it gets utilized in bodily functions and so forth. But if you're just you're just sitting at your desk on the game and you eat a donut and drink a coffee, it just went to fat. Right? For the most part, just for simplification.
So what you're saying is I can eat it and then I can go run and work out and I'll be fine? No.
Well, definitely there
to a certain degree, probably.
There are some benefits if you are going to consume a carbohydrate that's, glucose. There are great benefits to doing it after the workout, right? Post-workout, it'll drop cortisol levels, the stress hormone. Yep. Your body will replace glycogen stores, which is the energy, the sugars, like the glucose storage inside the muscle that the body needs to sprint and for certain activities. So it can store glucose in glycogen stores in the body. So when you consume it post-workout, the carbohydrate is going to go to much better uses.
Kind of as a rebuilding tool versus a fat building tool.
And then if you eat, lunch at work, but immediately you go out and go for a walk for 15 or 20 minutes, right after you've eaten. I think Andrew Huberman had some statistics that said like you had a 50% reduction in
and I heard, and I don't remember the numbers or anything, but I heard Metabolic Mike Mutzel. Yeah. I heard him talk about this a lot. It's like every time you eat a meal, take 10, 15 minutes and go do not really like a full-on speed walk, but do a walk. Yeah. And I mean, he has a ton of stuff on
So being active immediately after consuming some carbohydrates can be helpful, or you're like, I'll be hiking up a mountain with you and Lampers and it's steep.
Trying to keep up.
I'm whooping your ass and we get about halfway and you can feel some shakiness and some blood sugar drop. Like you can tell, like, you just crave sugar right away. I imagine my body is burning glucose like crazy. Yep. It's burning those carbohydrates. And as it's burning those carbohydrates for that hike, you're burning through them all.
You went through them all.
And now the body has to switch to fat burning, which isn't quite as efficient in some ways. And so you're like, you can feel it, and it takes a minute, I think, to shift or for your body to go, okay, there's no sugar available, blah, blah, blah. You can bonk a little
before it dives into the preserves.
And that's when you like pop in like a shot block or some freeze-dried pineapple, or you start to consume some of that sugar mid-hike. So again, that timing, it's not storing it as fat. It's being kind of consumed because of the activity.
It's almost like a replacement.
Activity levels, exercise is undeniably hyper beneficial for the body. And so, naturally it's going to help with this insulin response. But one of the things that came out from this podcast that hadn't really clicked to me before was he talks about how it's really the insulin that is the culprit. It's not the sugar in a way. So his comment was the insulin response, and this is whether it's glucose or fructose, right? When you eat either one, the sugar comes into the body, insulin spikes, insulin goes up, it goes to storing fat. Now, in the midst of that, if you did consume fructose, it's like a poison. You've consumed that without fiber, right? Fructose without fiber, it's like a poison. What it does is it inhibits those 3 enzymes, which then cause some severe damage to the efficiency of the entire machine that you're building, your body. It's the furnace gets colder, it doesn't burn efficiently, and you have all these other side effects down the road. Let's go to the next clip.
Well, it turns out that glucose rise was not benign. That glucose rise led to endothelial dysfunction.
Could you just remind people what endothelial cells are?
The inside of your arteries. Okay. And it will change blood pressure. We've got plenty of data to demonstrate how it changes blood pressure. And over time, that will cause coronary artery disease. That will cause kidney disease, et cetera.
So that insulin response, like he said, it's not benign. It has a lot of downsides. Turns out that spiked level of insulin leads to, like he said, some metabolic conditions, artery issues, and it's too scientific for me, but I get it. A high insulin response often is not good for me.
Now, people think insulin is good because it lowers blood glucose. After all, diabetics take insulin, to lower their blood glucose. Okay, let's take a diabetic, a patient with diabetes. Blood sugar's 300. That's bad. We give them a shot of insulin in the arm. Blood sugar goes down to 100. Blood sugar went from 300 to 100. Okay. Where did the 200 points of blood glucose go?
I'm assuming that the insulin sequestered it.
To where?
I'm assuming to the liver.
To the fat.
Interesting.
For storage. That's insulin's job. Insulin takes whatever you're not burning and puts it into fat for storage. Insulin is not the diabetes hormone. Insulin is the energy storage hormone.
So like you said, like we already mentioned, the insulin hormone will stores it's the fat storing hormone.
Right.
All right. Now, if you're active, then you will clear glucose into muscle. Therefore, your blood glucose won't rise as much because it went into muscle. And therefore, your pancreas will put out less insulin because it doesn't have to clear as much from the bloodstream. And that's okay. That's good. Right? But let's say you didn't exercise. So you've got a big glucose excursion. Now you have a big insulin response. And that insulin is going to take the excess that's in your blood. It has to clear it, and it will go to fat for storage. That insulin rise turns out to be particularly egregious in terms of metabolic disease.
Like I mentioned before, I didn't understand that insulin was really the trigger for a lot of these metabolic conditions.
Right.
It is true that the insulin is responding to the sugar, right? So the more the sugar, then the more the insulin.
Yeah, right.
But a lot of people used to believe that it was just the sugar causing other issues.
Yeah.
But they've got this mouse that he talks about where they do some
his favorite mouse.
Yeah, they do some bad stuff to this mouse. And so they're able to isolate that it's actually just the insulin that's the issue, not the glucose. Because the glucose, excess levels of glucose, when they shut down other receptors in the body, didn't do anything to the mouse.
Right.
But excess levels of insulin do. And so
interesting.
It doesn't matter. The the issue and the thing to walk away from is to know that insulin is making the kidney disease. It's the culprit. Insulin does stuff by itself. It doesn't need sugar. That's a direct quote from Dr. Lustig. Insulin does stuff by itself. It doesn't need the sugar to do it.
Wow.
So that means when you take an artificial sweetener,
right?
Okay, this is really interesting. It will still cause an insulin response. So an artificial sweetener still acts as if you ate sugar.
Right.
It still produces insulin and still contributes to the downside of.
So whether it's the fructose glucose sugar or the artificial sugar, you're still getting that insulin spike.
You
right?
are, but not at the same level.
Okay.
It's just worth noting that 0 calorie doesn't actually mean 0 fat gained.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, is it better to eat monk fruit
That's what I'm
than it
curious
is
about.
to eat fructose?
Right.
No doubt. 1,000%. Like you said before, let's say you are consuming glucose, which does not inhibit mitochondrial function.
Right.
So you're eating a good form of sugar from the carbohydrate. And that glucose is combined with, and then you compare that intake with something like monk fruit. Okay. There's like it sounds like there's potentially, an 80% reduction in the damage caused, which is a lot.
Right.
Which is a lot.
I'll take it.
So, but it's still causing. So he has this example where he says they took people trying to lose weight for like a month, and I guess they probably put all things equal. So it's just a certain amount of calories. And they did this study. Okay. They had 4 groups. Okay. Those who drank, maybe it was a liter. I don't know. A liter of milk a day, a liter of water a day, a liter of soda a day, and a liter of diet soda per day.
Okay.
Okay. And then all calories are flat, otherwise the same. Okay. What happened to the people who drank water?
Couldn't tell you. I would say that
they lost 2 pounds.
I was going to say they had to have lost weight.
They lost 2 pounds.
Okay.
Okay. What happened to the group that drank the soda?
Well, they'd have to gain multiple pounds.
They gained 20 pounds. Yeah. Okay. So water lost 2 pounds.
Yep.
Soda gained
20
pounds. I don't remember what the amount was. Maybe it was a gallon. I don't remember.
Yeah. Right.
It wasn't a gallon, but it was whatever the dose is. It doesn't really matter for the illustration of the point. So you're consuming water and restricting calories, you lose 2 pounds. You're consuming soda, restricting calories, you gain 20.
I'm curious about the milk because I love milk.
Okay. So you got in the middle, right? You got middle. You got diet soda and you got milk.
Yep.
Okay. On the milk, 0 change.
I'll take it.
Nothing happened.
All day. Okay.
They didn't gain weight. They didn't lose weight.
Yep.
They stayed the same. And they posit some reasons for that. Maybe you're a little more satiated because food is somewhat of a solid. So you ate less other foods because you consume that food.
Yeah, I was curious about that because obviously you have more nutrition and calories in milk than you do water. So I wonder if they across the board kind of even those out somehow with some other food
and
here.
Lactose is doesn't particularly cause a major insulin response.
Right.
It is a form of sugar, carbohydrate rather, but it doesn't spike
your insulin
levels the same way. So there's some theories there. Okay. So we got water lost 2 pounds, milk stayed the same, and soda you gained 20 pounds. I think it was 20. Maybe it was 10. Maybe it was 10 pounds.
Either way,
it had to be 10 pounds. It had to be 10 pounds. Yeah, it was 10 pounds, not 20, 10 pounds.
Okay.
10 pounds in this group. And then diet soda. What happened to those guys?
They probably died.
Did they stay the same? Did they lose weight? Did they gain weight?
I think they gained weight.
Yeah. They gained 2 pounds.
2 pounds? Okay.
So you got 10 pounds with the soda. You got 2 pounds gained with the diet soda. You got 0 with the milk. No loss, no gains. And you you lost 2 pounds on the water.
Mm-hmm. And you gain 10 with the soda.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're going to compare diet soda to soda or a 0-calorie sweetener to soda, if one's 10 pounds and one's 2 pounds, there's an 80% difference,
Right. Yeah.
which is not nothing.
Right.
But don't think that because you're eating something that has 0 calories,
Right.
that your body isn't producing insulin, because it is.
Right.
It senses sweetness. The brain says, oh, we're having this
Where's some
thing.
sugar.
Produces insulin. It has nowhere to go. It causes fat storage. Something to that effect, basically. So the next thing that is important is back to the discussion on inflammation.
That insulin rise turns out to be particularly egregious in terms of metabolic disease, and I can prove it. There is a mouse, my favorite mouse. I love this mouse. This mouse turns medicine on its head and teaches every doctor why they have to go back to medical school and learn it right. This mouse is called the Podurko mouse.
In 10 seconds or less, basically, these are mice that are genetically engineered to lack the receptor for insulin, specifically in the
glomerulopodocyte, the kidney.
In the kidney.
Right.
And everywhere else in this mouse, insulin does its thing normally.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
So these animals are euglycemic, normal blood glucose levels. These animals are normally glucose tolerant. So they go up, they go down, just like every other mouse. These mice are not fat. These mice are not thin. These mice are mice, except they have the worst diabetic nephropathy on the planet.
So their kidney is degenerative.
Their kidneys degenerate to nothing.
Yikes.
Now, they have normal blood glucose levels. They have normal glucose tolerance. They have normal insulin tolerance, whole body. But their kidneys are dying. How come? Can't be the glucose. It's the insulin. Because insulin's the bad guy. Insulin's actually making the kidney disease. And so these animals that are insulin resistant, they have diabetic nephropathy without diabetes.
So the insulin is having a clearly negative effect on the kidneys without binding to the receptor.
Exactly.
So circulating insulin can do stuff without binding to its receptor.
Well, it binds to its receptor in different parts of the body.
Other parts of the body.
Other parts
but in
of
the
the
kidney,
body.
it can't because it's a knockout.
Because it's knockout, right. The point is, insulin does stuff by itself. And it turns out insulin drives growth.
All right, so we've talked about how fructose it inhibits the enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
It can contribute to a dysfunction of your mitochondria and your metabolic health.
Right.
We talked about how the sugar, whether it's fructose or glucose, whatnot, it gives you an insulin spike, which then causes fat storage.
Mm-hmm.
And the next part of this is, okay, what are some other downstream impacts of this? What is fructose doing?
Right.
And this is where we get into something else that it does. So not only does it inhibit the enzymes, but it also has a deleterious effect on your gut.
Okay.
And so listen to this.
Your intestine is a sewer. Definition of a sewer: a pipe with shit in it. Okay? That's its sewer. Our intestines are sewers. There's junk in the center, and the job of the intestine is to move the junk through to the anus, absorbing the good stuff while you can. The intestine is made up of cells, intestinal epithelial cells, that are bound together, and they're bound with proteins that basically form a barrier. And those barriers are called tight junction proteins.
What defines a tight junction? Is it that is like completely impermeable or semi-permeable?
Completely impermeable.
Okay.
Unless its function is inhibited. Turns out if you alter the phosphorylation status or the nitrate status of that tight junction, it will become transiently permeable.
Okay.
And so fructose nitrates tight junction proteins, causing them to be transiently permeable, allowing some of the junk in your intestine to get through into your bloodstream.
So this is leaky gut.
This is leaky gut. This is what causes leaky gut. Fructose is a driver of leaky gut.
Got it.
That causes inflammation at the level of the liver, which ultimately leads to systemic inflammation. One of the reasons why high sensitivity CRP is high in patients who eat ultra-processed food.
CRP is C-reactive protein, which is a marker of essentially an inflammatory immune response.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want it too high.
And 93% of Americans today are inflamed.
Does that mean that 93% of Americans have leaky guts?
Yeah, it does, because that's where it comes from.
Wow. 93%.
Dude, are we in the 7%?
Right.
That don't have leaky gut?
I want to know.
Because I got to tell you, I don't think I'm that disciplined on the diet as I should be. I have been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The last couple of years, you know, things get busy. You get lackadaisical. So the question is, first of all, you know, am I in that inflamed category or have I sort of escaped that? So just to break it down, okay, you got a lot of garbage going through the gut. It's all the waste. It's all the junk. It's all the stuff that the body says we don't want, we don't need, we need to get rid of it.
Yep.
Okay. As it's going through the sewer pipe, there are junctions in the pipe that have been damaged by fructose.
Yep.
By the sugar intake. And it's caused those junctions in the gut, those connecting areas to weaken and then be permeable, and they'll allow
the bad stuff,
the sewage, into your bloodstream, into your body.
Yep.
Now the body sees that leaking gut and the garbage coming through it, the intestinal waste and this and all of that coming through, and it says this is dangerous, and it has an autoimmune response, and it tries to battle it, and it causes inflammation, it causes swelling, causes soreness, autoimmune response, eczema, things like that are generally from, again, this garbage leaking through your gut and into your body. Okay. Which causes, like you said, some levels of systemic inflammation that might show up in various ways, but that inflammation is bad.
Right.
It's not good.
No.
You want to be in the 7% that doesn't have this inflammation. Okay.
It's a pretty small percentage.
And some, of course, I'm sure it's on a spectrum where, you know, some guts are way better than others and some are worse, but I'd like to be in the 100% clean category.
Me too. Me too.
I'd like to be in the,
and it sounds like it's a hard category to get into.
So there you go. Another issue to consider is when every time you eat fructose, every time you consume it without, you know, we're talking processed sugars, corn syrup and so on.
Yeah.
Every time you consume that stuff and it's in the foods you eat, little by little by little, each time you dump that into your system, you're inhibiting metabolic health. You're causing extreme, much more fat storage, because without the insulin, without the fiber, the insulin is much higher, and you're causing a leaky gut reaction, which is also causing inflammation as well. So you're just jacked all over.
Right.
Okay. And all of this is contributing to your ill health.
And my question to you is, how much of that weight loss effect do you think is a calories in versus calories out effect? Because they're eating a lot of food, and in some cases, and how much of it do you think is the elimination or near elimination of this fructose or this glucose fructose combination?
It's nothing to do with the calories. It has everything to do with the insulin. If you get the insulin down, you're not shunting energy to fat. You can lose weight. Your fat will give up the triglycerides stored in it as soon as your insulin goes down. Insulin is pushing on your fat cell all the time. And as long as your insulin's up, your fat cell can't release it. The minute your insulin goes down, you can now engage in what we call lipolysis, Hormone sensitive lipase is an enzyme in the fat cell that is inhibited by insulin. As soon as the insulin's gone, hormone sensitive lipase can turn that stored triglyceride into free fatty acids and glycerol and release it, and you can lose weight. So get the insulin down and it all works. So the question is, what makes insulin go up? Well, two things: refined carbohydrate and sugar. Those are the two things that make insulin go up. In addition, branched chain amino acids make insulin go up as well. Leucine, isoleucine, valine, which is in corn-fed beef, chicken, and fish, processed food. All right. Here's the deal in one concept. My colleague, Dr. Carlos Montero, who is a professor of public health at the University of Sao Paulo, has done the world a great service. He has developed a system for categorization of food processing. It is called the NOVA system.
I talked about the NOVA system before, and I kind of gave you a rundown on that. But I wanted to play that clip because you hear a lot of people say, calories
make you fat.
Yeah, like, well, only 2,000 calories today and I'll lose weight, and 3,000 calories and blah, 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 calorie restriction. It's really not a good way to look at it when you're trying to lose weight, because as he said, if you have chronic levels of insulin, high levels of insulin in the system, because you had some carbs for breakfast, you have some carbs mid snack, you have some carbs for lunch, you have some, even if it's low carbs, you're causing the insulin
still getting the
hormone
spike
to be produced. And that insulin hormone is like a lock on your cell that traps the fat inside. It's like he said, it's continually pushing on the cell to keep it closed. So it's not going to burn fat. So if you have high levels, this is why fasting, you go fasting, you go without eating. And the body's like, hey, I'm hungry. Especially if you consume quite a bit of sugar on the average. Those elevated levels of sugar have produced a high level of insulin, the insulin hormone in your body. And while those hormone levels are elevated, the insulin levels are elevated, your body simply cannot extract the fat from the cell.
You're storing that fat.
So it can't pull it out and burn it. So, yeah, you're hungry because the body's saying, give me more sugar. Give me more, because the body's incapable at this stage. It's incapable of getting to the fat cell. So until you reduce your insulin level by consuming far lower levels of carbohydrate, or even a feeding window or a fasting period or whatever, you got to get those insulin levels. You got to get those insulin levels down. They got to drop. And once you get those down, the body can then start.
Then it can start using the fat cells as energy, as food, burning it.
And there are various cells, and like if you don't use it, the fat burning cells and the fat burning machine that the human body has, it's not ramped up to do it. So a lot of people, I remember 15, 20 years ago when I was eating high carbs, like the food pyramid and grains at the bottom, and it was all like whole grains and this and that with a little bit of fish and meat at the top, and stay away from the eggs.
Probably turn that pyramid upside down and start from that point.
Again, big pharma and big food, big ag. So what happened there is I had hyper levels of insulin production, and I was swollen and I was sore. I was wondering in my early 30s when I was kind of hitting these new CrossFit gyms that were kind of new at the time, and I was working out, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking around and there's some dude there that's like 55 doing the same workouts as me. And the next day he coming back and he's doing it again. And the next day, and I'm so sore I can hardly walk. And he seems pretty good. Being twice my age. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing wrong? And I went over to one of these guys, super fit guy, like 55, jacked. I'm like, dude. And that's when he gave me the book, The Primal Blueprint, or turned me on to the book Primal Blueprint and the Paleo Solution. And I started to learn more about these processes. And I was like, what? And right away, as I began to, I tried to eat less, eat fewer carbs. It was really hard. Like today, now I can stop eating anytime I feel like it. At 7 o'clock, I'll not eat, and then I'll go to bed. 9 o'clock, 10. I'll wake up the next morning, 5:30, 6 a.m. I won't eat until 11 or noon. I have like a feeding window from noon to 7 or 1 to 8 p.m. And that's it. And the rest of the time, I'm perfectly alert, strong, feeling good without food on my system. Back in the day, though, when I was having junk and Mountain Dew,
like, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to starve to death.
1 hour without food, and I feel like I was so hungry. 2 hours, I'm so hungry.
I totally remember. Like, again, I'm young. I'm 35, but there was a time pre-30, 230, where diet was not good.
Yeah,
and I was on the road like 300 days out of the year, and again, diet was not good. I could have changed that, but testosterone levels drop really low. Your belly fat starts to grow. Your energy starts to decline. I mean, it all plays back to the food of what you're eating. And so, like, when I switched to more of like a paleo type diet to almost even like a carnivore type diet, completely changed. I mean, and I didn't change the workout routine. I just changed my food routine. Yeah. And it completely changed. I lost 10, 15 pounds within a couple months without doing anything different other than food. Yeah. And so it just plays such a big part in it.
I think for people out there that have struggled to lose weight, sometimes, like he said, calories not a calorie. I don't care about calories. Right. He said that in that clip. I don't care about calories. Like that, just get your insulin levels down. Get your insulin levels down and everything else works out. Yeah. Which means that you can eat steak and eggs and nuts and fats and all this kind of stuff.
What type of calorie are you putting in your body?
Get rid of the calories that cause insulin production. Yep. And you will begin to lose weight. Right. How empowering is that? Exactly. And it takes a while to get your metabolic health back when it's jacked up. Yeah. It takes a while to get the body to ramp up, and it's not easy during that phase. Like I said, I was so hungry all the time when I didn't have to be. But when I started eating some steaks and elk and deer, and I started eating way less carbs, and I was having avocados and tomatoes and salads, and I was eating delicious foods. Yeah. Delicious, healthy foods. Right. There's so many options that are so tasty and do not impact, do not spike your insulin like much at all. And when you can transition to that, boom, your whole life can change. Right. Next clip.
So in other words, you consumed all this vitamin D and it didn't go where you needed it to go. And the reason was because you're inflamed. You have to fix the inflammation before the vitamin D can be effective. And 93% of Americans are inflamed. So giving them vitamin D is not going to do a damn thing.
This is something I realized a long time ago, that all the inflammation that you've built up because of the diet, because of the sugar intake, because of the excess insulin levels, the high fructose corn syrups and the soda pops and all that kind of stuff, those elevated levels of insulin that are causing all this inflammation, leaky gut, enzymes that are inhibited, so forth, all this crap. Okay. I was like, well, I'll just combat it by I'll still eat the junk, but what I'll also do is, man, I'll eat the cleanest, healthiest foods, and I'll also have, my steaks, and I'll eat my salad, right? And I'll take my omega-3s, and I'll eat fish, because they got good fish oils and stuff, and all this. I'll take my vitamins.
I'll work out,
and I will just neutralize all the bad stuff by taking in the good stuff. Yeah. And the truth is, just like he mentioned there, the excess levels of inflammation, they won't allow the body to process.
They overpower
all the good you're doing.
Exactly.
You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You don't get to do that. No. And that was a realization that I had to come to face with, because none of us want to give up especially if
the
we're
ice cream. And
none of us want to give up like the garbage.
right.
And he talks about why we want that. By the way, fructose has the same. It preys and plays on the same mechanisms that heroin and cocaine
Yep.
and all these other addictive, euphoric feeling generating
that dopamine
drugs
that gets
do.
dropped in your brain. Like, I need more.
And it's highly addictive.
Mm-hmm.
So getting off of it, he talks about the elasticity pricing of food. So eggs, when they go up in price,
yep,
they're one of those products that when they go up in price, there's a severe reduction in purchasing.
Really?
So like they go up $1, it's something like people stop buying eggs at like 30% fewer eggs. Okay. Let's say that your fast food goes up $1, $2, $3. It doesn't impact it at all. So human beings go, okay, if the price of this goes up, I'm not going to buy it anymore. But when it comes to junk food, they're like, I don't care if it's twice what I normally pay. I'm still buying it.
All the time is like, oh, it's too expensive to eat healthy. But then I always go back to the longevity of life, the fulfillment of life, to be active, to be healthy. That's worth the price of paying it at the supermarket versus putting it towards a fast food or whatever.
Not just that. I mean, I've thought about that too for a long time, but I think the reason that people buy the fast food, like he said, is because they're addicted.
Yeah, it's a dopamine effect.
There's dopamine. There's an addiction going on.
Absolutely,
that's physiological. That's in play, and it's not easy to break it.
Yep,
but it's there. And yeah, so he's really kind of talking about the effects that these things have on you. It's super bad,
right?
And it's everywhere. It's in everything. He talked about how almost every food in the grocery store is spiked with fructose,
right?
Because they know that it's an addictive molecule, and that the body wants it and craves it.
Consumer will buy it.
Got it. Is reducing fructose intake one of the primary ways to reduce systemic inflammation?
Absolutely.
What are some others?
Reducing oxidative stress in general, so heavy metals like cadmium. Cadmium is very high in chocolate. There are the main thing is to make that gut work right. So fiber, short chain fatty acid production from fiber is a huge boon and
to reduce inflammation.
To reduce inflammation.
You've heard myself talk about this with Hillary Lampers before on the podcast. We did some on gut health, and this is kind of a recap. She has shared the same things before, and we've done some shows on this. He's talking about how to reduce inflammation across the board. How do you get healthier across the board? And you notice how he's like, well, don't eat fructose. Yes, reduce that. Stay away from heavy metals. Yeah, and some South American chocolates are a little high on some heavy metals. So are some fish, right?
Right.
But what he basically says, he kind of stops himself and he goes, get your gut right. Yeah. That's it.
Right.
Make your gut healthy. Get your gut right. And at the outset of the podcast, which I skipped, I have a couple clips for that, but I kind of went through them. But he talks about that, how when you eat, for example, like I think he said 160 calories in almonds, 30 calories of that goes to the bacteria in your gut. So you don't actually consume that or use it for cell growth or anything. 30% of it goes to the gut. And he brought up some other examples of berries and other things with fiber in them. Goes to your gut. Right. Feeds your gut biome. It feeds the bacteria in your gut. He talks about how important that is. And here he is talking about, okay, we're going to reduce inflammation in the body. What do? Well, fructose, we know, causes lots of problems to the gut and the gut lining. And he talks about that some more, and I'm not going to get into that, but he does talk about how the gut lining gets really nasty. There's 3 layers to the intestine. And he said, basically, in summary, fiber is the defense against leaky gut. It's so critical.
Right.
But processed foods, they take the fiber out of everything.
Yeah.
So eating an apple, eating a salad, eating some celery, eating
the old
broccoli.
saying, an apple a day keeps the doc away.
Yeah, like eating these foods with fiber in them.
Right.
green
Unless it's a genetically
vegetables.
Modified apple. Stay away.
He even talks about like, you know, because we're so surrounded by this stuff. But he did mention Nova 1, 2, 3. Remember we talked about we got the apple slices in a bag.
Right.
And then we got the
applesauce.
The applesauce. And he's like, as much as these three, you know, one is ideal, the apple itself, and there's some downsides. He said statistically on the studies that they performed, they're really seeing that Nova 4 direct correlation
is
the killer, the major killer. So if you actually kind of stick with at least Nova 1, 2, and 3, you're 1,000 times ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
Which then makes me feel like, okay, maybe my diet
I'm doing pretty good.
is not so bad, but it could always be better.
Always.
But fiber intake, you know, I basically eat greens and salad like once, maybe twice a day.
Yeah. Same here.
It's easy. Like it takes a while to chew up a salad,
right?
But I'm like, I like it. I'll throw sweet peppers, broccoli, tomatoes. We'll throw various greens,
cucumbers.
We got the spinach in there, you know, various romaine and other lettuces. I'll throw in cauliflower. You know, Suzanne will get just random stuff, chop it all up, throw it in a salad, put some cheese crumble on it or something.
Yep.
We have like 5 different cheeses. I love cheese.
Me too.
And we'll throw a different cheese on there, from feta to goat or whatever, mozzarella, various olive oils infused, and we'll throw balsamic vinegars on there as well. I like Redstone. I buy a lot of that stuff from Redstone. And you can mix and match your you know, I feel like it's a very healthy way to go when it comes to dressing for the salad.
Exactly, because a lot of people don't realize is when you get a salad, but then the French that you put on top
almost
of that
90%
negates the whole salad.
99% of the dressings in the store are high fructose corn syrup or soybean oil. So later he talks about the impact of seed oils a little bit, and talks about trans fats a little bit, and omega-3s. And this goes back to what we touched on a little bit earlier about inflammation. You can't simply just keep eating corn chips, potato chips, you know, things that are cooked in safflower oil, canola oil, these seed oils. You can't keep consuming these high in omega-6 vegetable oils and then just combat the downsides of those with just more fish oil.
The good stuff.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to eliminate the things causing the inflammation in order to leverage the benefits of the healthy oils.
Right.
I learned that back when I was following the sort of the paleo solution, the paleo diet, and I was consuming, you know, it's kind of sticking to my old diet, but I was tracking how many grams of fish oil I was getting a day in comparison. And the app I was using at the time, this is like 15 years ago, and it maybe 10, but it would do this thing where it would track, okay, based on what I ate today, I got about 12 grams of omega-3s or 6 grams of omega-3. And at first I was getting like 30 grams, like it was 3 to 0 omega-6s in my diet based on what I was eating before. So I switched it up and started consuming foods that were high in omega-3. And then it got to be 1 to 1 or 2 to 1 ratio. I still wasn't really experiencing a drop in inflammation.
Right.
I was still chronically sore. Like I could take some ibuprofen.
Doesn't matter if you're 4 to 1, 5 to 1.
Yeah,
omega-3s to the omega-6, and that one omega-6 is going to cancel.
You need some omega-6,
correct.
But it turned out that the omega-6 oils I was too replete with them in my diet and in my system, And so when my hands would get stiff and I took an ibuprofen,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a young man until it wore off. But that's got all sorts of downsides.
Yeah.
It's not
Gut problems, whatever.
It's not healthy. I wanted it to clear naturally. I wanted the inflammation to reduce in a natural way.
Right.
And that's where the omega-3s came in. Once I finally got those seed oils out of my diet,
right,
and I started eating vegetables and all that clean stuff, brought in some fish a few days a week along with some fish oil, and did that for 6 months. Then I stopped being sore. I stopped even having the stiff joints, the knuckles that would get tight and the knees that would hurt. So you got to do more than just
I'll add this too, just from having kids, and a lot of you have kids out there, is look at your kids' vitamins. If you're giving them vitamins, especially if they're a gummy type of vitamin. Now there's some exceptions, some healthy gummies, but there's so many gummies that one of the first ingredients in there is high fructose corn syrup.
Oh yeah,
and it's supposed to be a vitamin.
Yeah,
it's like, man, literally poison. Handing the kids poison over what you think is a healthy vitamin.
Yes, correct.
And
so getting away from these types of foods, it takes work, a little bit of work.
Oh, absolutely.
I will say this, the Harvest Right freeze dryer, it has allowed us to sort of have the snacks that taste kind of like the store-bought ones that you kind of crave, but they're not. They do have the fiber in them.
Right.
And they are healthy. And we've been able to make smoothies, various smoothies, using the Stealthy Hunter. We'll use the bone broth protein, the chocolate or the vanilla, mix it with the banana and some peanut butter in the blender, some ice. You mix that thing up. It's delicious, especially post-workout. You take that, and Livesay has like a pineapple, kale sort of smoothie he does with the bone broth protein from Stealthy Hunter. And he'll mix that up in a blender. He'll dump that into
those silicone trays,
freeze dry those. And you can add a little water to it and your instant smoothie.
You can multiple ways. You can
just pop it in your mouth.
Bite-sized candy.
And it tastes like candy.
Yeah.
And so you can pre-make, take a weekend, a day or so, and just pre-make like 15 smoothies.
Yep.
And then freeze dry them. And you're good for the month just on that snack.
Right.
You can take sweet potatoes and you can turn those basically into sweet potato bites.
Right.
Or they're like potato chips. And instead of eating potato chips that are fried and all kinds of crap, you pop open a bag of yams and you pop those things and they taste like a potato chip.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're not.
No.
They're not fried, nothing. They crunch nicely. They're like they're candy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And then if you add a little nutmeg and cinnamon and a little honey or something on there, you have these great treats.
Without the fructose and without the.
So I recommend the freeze dryers a lot. Those have helped. They've also helped us for just emergencies. They helped us for our hunts. In the description field of our videos, there's a link. And if you go there, you'll save $300 or $400.
Yeah, and if they have like some promotion going on, it's like always giving you whatever the highest promotion that they have going on for that freeze dryer or accessories.
So if you click our link, you'll get a pretty good discount. And the thing is, though, they're expensive.
Yeah.
Ryan and Livesay, Lampers and Livesay have been working on, and they should have completed by now, but they're total slackers. They're working on their freeze-dried food course.
Correct.
And they have all these recipes we've been talking about right there, and you just duplicate them and you're golden. It's just, it's good stuff. But they haven't got it out yet. But, Brad has the smallest freeze dryer they make.
Yep.
And I have the biggest, or the second to the biggest.
I can't remember. I think yours is the large. They make an XL as well.
Mine's big, and I recommend mine.
After using mine a lot, I highly second. Go with the bigger one. Go with at least a medium if you're like a single household family. But go in on it with your buddies, because
that's what I was just about to say.
But man, it's so nice having those meals. I mean,
let's say
freeze dried meals or they're expensive.
Let's say that the freeze dryer costs you $2,500
for the small,
$3,000 or so for like the bigger one.
The medium, yep, correct.
Let's say I would say you go with the $3,000 version. And you're like, man, I don't know if I'll even use it. You get your buddy to go in, or 3 buddies, each pitch in $1,000. And then you take turns housing it or using it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a better method because you can get so much done. I'd go big. I'd go large if you can.
Well, it takes about the same amount of time for the small mills or the small freeze dryer with the mills as it does like a large.
Yeah, the batch processing, let's say it's 24 hours or it's 48 hours for what you're making.
Yep.
It's 48 hours whether you can have 1 tray of food or 20 trays of food.
Exactly.
You know?
And in those larger freeze dryers, the trays are much bigger. They're longer.
You can get like 80 to 90 eggs in my freeze dryer.
I can get
all at once.
I think I'm like 50 some eggs or something like that. 40 some eggs for my small.
Well, that's all. If you can do that, I can do way more than that.
Yeah. Oh no, you I think in the large, I believe in the large you can get like 84, 86 eggs in it. And I'm about half of that with the small.
Mine must process a little faster. I don't know, because all I know is I'm cranking through meals like crazy and I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Like I make my stuff and I'm done for a while. Brad's got to run it 24/7 for a month
all the time
to try to keep up with some production.
It's true.
And so it's a little bit and admittedly there's a lot of volume coming out, but mine sits vacant for
not mine
a month or 2 at a time.
I can't.
And then it goes anytime I want to just make huge batches, I do them. And
so I'm like I've doubled up on trays, so I got trays in the freezer. As soon as the tray's done in the freeze dryer and it thaws, next one goes out of the freezer into the freeze dryer, and the other ones get filled with food back into the freezer.
So back to that, I recommend the bigger one, go in on it with a buddy or something. You know, I think, but I do highly recommend that. Anyway, I wanted to get back into finishing up this episode. We were talking to, Andrew Huberman talks to Dr. Lustig about statins. You know, the other day I was at the doctor's office and the doctor was saying, "Oh man, your cholesterol level's a little bit high. I think we should put you on statins." And I'm thinking, lady, dude, I do not have a metabolic problem.
Right.
Trust me. But the pharmaceutical industry, the big pharma industry, is pushing statins all the time. It's like what they do.
Yep.
And statins, for you that don't know, they're there to lower your cholesterol. And this is what Dr. Lustig tells Andrew Huberman on the show.
Let's talk about what we're really talking about. Let's start with statins. Statins lower LDL. Okay. Do statins reduce heart disease? Yes or no?
You know, I seem to be whiffing today on all the quizzes, and it's kind of becoming fun for me at this level. I'm going to go with no, but I will say, you know, my friend, and I think his expert physician as well, you know, Peter Attia and others, you know, has talked about some of the positive attributes of statins in certain cases for certain patients.
In certain cases, that's exactly right. So for primary prevention, that is, your LDL's high, you need a statin. That's primary prevention. You haven't declared yourself, you haven't had an event. For primary prevention, the mean increase in lifespan for being on a statin is 4 days.
4 days?
4 days.
4 days. So I have to chuckle. That's
and the risk for diabetes is 20% increase.
What about any improvement in quality of life?
None. For primary prevention. Now, for secondary prevention, in other words, you've already declared yourself, you already have a problem. For secondary prevention, that's where statins shine.
He's talking about how primary versus
the secondary.
Secondary is this, like the doctor trying to give me statins. I haven't had an event, no heart attacks, no like numbness, no issues have arisen from this number, this high cholesterol number. And yet there's like this very intense push to put me on statins.
Right.
And what he's saying is the statistical data shows that if you haven't had a heart attack, if you haven't had an event, you haven't had some kind of major health crisis as a result of like a heart attack, then there's no upside to being on
You'll
statins.
live 4 days longer.
You'll live 4 days longer, but
you're 20% more likely to get diabetes.
Yeah, it'll come with a 20% increase to get diabetes.
I'll take those.
Dude.
Less 4 days.
Effectively, 4 days is zero.
Yeah.
Effectively, 4 days is zero, meaning there's no difference between people on statins and off statins if you never had some sort of cardiac issue.
Some episode, yeah.
Some kind of episode. Now, later he goes on to say, yeah, if you've had an episode, there's some data to indicate that statins help.
Yeah.
But that's pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
And he continues.
So there's a value to them. I'm not arguing that. And if you have familial hypercholesterolemia, which is 1 in 500, okay, not only do you need a statin, but you need a low-fat diet and a priest. Okay? So there is definitely a value to statins, but not for primary prevention. But that's what every doctor is doing. Oh, your LDL, it's over 80. You need a statin. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely a joke. And the data show that. In fact, my colleague Asim Malhotra in the UK participated in an analysis where they took the entire UK population and they took out everybody under age 65. So they're looking at people 65 to 90. And it turned out that the LDL level correlated with longevity. The higher the LDL, the longer they lived when you took out all the people who had problems. So LDL is not really the problem. And the reason is because there are two LDLs. There's one called large buoyant, and there's one called small dense. Turns out dietary fat raises your large buoyant. Your large buoyant is irrelevant. It is cardiovascularly neutral. But that's the one that statins affects. The small dense, that's the atherogenic particle. When your small dense LDL is high, that means you are not clearing triglyceride peripherally, because that's what small dense show you. That's what happens to triglyceride, is because they become small dense.
Can I take a guess and say that the best way to reduce small dense is to reduce insulin?
Yes, by reducing sugar. Because that triglyceride is made in the liver. It's all palmitate, and that's the only fat that the liver knows how to make. And so triglyceride is your liver output of carbohydrate. That's how you have to look at triglyceride. So triglyceride turns out to be much more important as a cardiovascular risk factor than LDL ever was.
So does Big Pharma and Big Food, do they know all of this?
Yes. I know they know because they've told me so. But they have statins to sell.
That's it. That's it right there. Big pharma, big medicine, you can't trust them at all.
It's a multi-billion-dollar company.
You can't trust them at all. They are not there to save you or make you healthier. They're there to make money. And it's interesting how we talked about small LDL and big LDL. Mm-hmm. I had learned that years ago because my cholesterol level on the test, which they only tested the large.
Yep.
The level was high according to that test, and I was like 35.
Right.
And then I got pointed to this doctor, and he was like, "Well, it doesn't matter. That number doesn't indicate anything.
Yeah,
it's not an indicator of whether you have any cardiovascular heart issues at all."
Right.
And I'm like, "Well, it says over here if I have this high number, I'm at greater risk." And he's like, "No, not that number, not that particular type of cholesterol. It's this one over here."
Small.
Well, then you hear him, Huberman just asked him, well, okay, if that's the case, then, if I want to improve my health and reduce the risk of a cardiovascular disease, let me go on a limb here. He's like, that means I got to reduce
the sugar intake.
And he says, yes, reduce the sugar intake, which drops your insulin response, which then allows your body to function at its peak, at its best way.
Yep.
That right there is for best levels of metabolic health. So very interesting. I think that that's all information that empowers you to be healthier. If you're on statins and you've never had a heart attack and you've not had these issues, I'm a doctor and I'm not giving medical advice.
Right.
But if it were me, I would be looking into whether that's actually helping you or not. Like he said, I think I've heard something like 80% of the people on statins should not be on them. Right. They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Except increasing your risk of diabetes and other side effects that come with them.
Yep.
So that's information you ought to know. And believe me, the reason I mention this is because I've been to the doctor and the pressure and this fear, and it's like, you've got to, and this is so bad, and this drug will save you. And it's like, whoa, back up.
Yeah.
First of all, I really don't take any medications.
Yep.
And because I don't trust them from the get.
No.
And, I feel fit as I could be. And what you're telling me is I should feel like I'm about to die.
Yeah.
And I'm at this dangerous risk, and I don't. This isn't adding up.
Find a new doc.
Yeah. So anyway, that was just another thing to consider. Another thing that he mentioned that I didn't mention in the podcast, or that I haven't mentioned yet, he talked about trans fats. They're primarily they're illegal now.
Yeah.
But he talked about there are people still suffering from the trans fats era. I grew up in that era.
Right.
Margarine, butter. He talks about how those fats basically were a one-way ticket for the fat into the cell. It could go in but couldn't come out. That kind of thing. It inhibited other functions too. I may have gotten it wrong, but they're not legal now, as far as I know, in the U.S. But if you cook with olive oil at a temperature that causes it to smoke, that denatures the oil and it becomes a trans fat.
Correct.
It becomes one of those
there's like
toxic, carcinogenic fats.
3 oils that they say you only need. It's like avocado oil, olive oil, and I can't remember the third one. Or like beef tallow or something like that is what the 3 you would use. But then you have to be careful, like, okay, what temperature are you cooking at? Because your olive oil can turn into a trans fat, where like maybe your beef tallow has a higher burning point. And just use that for what you're cooking on that.
I like to use bear fat. You can heat that up hot as you want, and do French fries. If I'm frying corn tortillas or French fries or whatever, I have jars and jars. I use bear fat. Right. I also use bear fat on my boots for the past year and a half, and it is the best oil I've ever used on my boots.
Yeah.
It lasts the longest. It works the best. The boots are in great condition. I went back to the Daniel Boone style of leather treatment, and it's good.
Yeah.
But I cook with bear fat, and I cook if I need things super hot. The other oil I use if I don't use bear fat is coconut oil.
Yeah.
I cook with butter a lot.
Me too.
Those are kind of the three fats I cook with.
Right.
If I want to deep fry something, it's bear fat.
Yeah, exactly.
And olive oil, I eat a lot of olive oil, but I eat it as dressings, garnishes,
And again, olive oil has a pretty low burning point. So like it's when you're just a simmer, like not even a simmer, but a low cook temperature, that's where you use your olive oil at. I
don't cook with any avocado oil at all. I don't have it in the house.
Right.
I just eat a lot of avocados.
Right. Yeah.
Period.
Yep. I can't remember who was saying it. They were like, there are 3 oils that you can use to cook in your home with, and it was olive, avocado, and some type
beef
of fat.
tallow is just the same as any animal fat.
Right. Correct.
You can get animal fat hot and cook it
and
render it down, reuse it, stuff like that.
100%. But
you want to make sure you're doing it with. He talks in this podcast episode, if you want to go listen to it, 3.5 hours, but he talks about he talks about grass-fed versus corn-fed beef.
Right.
And there's just a lot of downsides to the corn-fed chickens.
There's not much nutrition in corn.
It's crazy where you go, and he talks about the marbling of steak and how basically you're eating an animal that had metabolic conditions, that was on the verge of a heart attack.
Yep.
And now you're consuming that animal, where when you eat an elk, it's tougher. You got to chew it longer.
Yeah.
But the flavor's delicious.
Right.
But that's it. It's not as tender as like some other steak that tastes like candy. At this point, I feel like a lot of those steaks taste funny because I've been eating game meat for so long.
Right.
They almost taste like sugar. And they're mushy.
Yeah.
And I don't like them at all now. After I just rarely eat anything, but I got moose in the freezer, I got caribou in the freezer, I got elk in the freezer, I got deer in the freezer, and we have fish from Alaska in the freezer.
It's pretty much gone.
I'm covered. I'm covered. I got bear meat in jars, and I got bear fat in jars. And it's hard to beat that diet.
Exactly.
Throw in the vegetables and the healthy stuff. And so my recommendation for all of you guys that are listening, I know for me, I decided after lately, as I've ramped up my fitness protocols and regime, I'm working on, I have basically leaned on consuming a lot more vegetable matter, a lot more salad, a lot more apples and high fiber fruits and berries. So I'm pretty heavy on that. I'm eating lots of protein, probably 120, 150 grams a day, sometimes more, mostly in the form of, wild game meat.
Right.
And I'll have some other forms like cottage cheese. I love the Stealthy Hunter bone broth. It's got all sorts of other goodies in it,
right?
Like piles of just extras that are just phenomenal. Hillary and Ryan have that nailed. The flavor is good. That bone broth protein. If you go and you shop at Stealthy, use the code GRITTY, get a discount. It helps us keep doing shows like this. Helps Ryan and Hillary when you shop there.
And you won't get the bloated gut.
Like
you
do
a normal
from
protein shake.
like a whey protein or something.
Correct.
And on another show, Peter Attia, which I'm going to cover on another episode, he talked about CBD oil and how massive it's been in his recovery rates. Again, that's something that Ryan and Hillary have at Stealthy Hunter. They have it in gummies as well as pill form. So, and then, the importance of omega-3s, krill oil and stuff like that. Anyway, there's so much out there for health and wellness. And really, I think, man, Ryan and Hillary have done their homework in diving into that stuff and figuring out what's really good for you. So I would check that out. I would go to Stealthy Hunter and I'd use the code GRITTY, see what's there, what works for you. Whether you shop over there or not, I'd recommend you get into the supplement game. Yeah.
And you can do a consult with Hillary, Dr. Hillary,
Can
too.
you?
I believe so. I know at one point she was doing like
Brad's giving out her phone number.
Call
her up.
So I think they would do she would do like a video conference consultation. That was during COVID. I don't know if she's still doing them now.
No, I try to find substitutes that are super satisfying, that are delicious, that I love to eat, but come without the cost. And I've been able to do that. You're like, man, I can't have ice cream like I used to, if I want to be in good shape. It's like, well, actually you can substitute that for maybe this food or that food that's really good, but doesn't have the downsides.
Right.
You have to just get creative. And I got to tell you, bacon wrapped avocado, with, this or that added to, it's a good substitute for some ice cream.
Right.
It's like nature's candy. So you can definitely play around with diet. And like I said, with the freeze dryer, you can really make foods that mimic processed foods. I hate to say it, but you can.
I was going to look at my Smart Sweets here.
Yeah. They're actually pretty low. They're kind of gummy. They're pretty low in, are they 0? They're like 5 grams of,
so
there's going to be an artificial sweetener.
Yeah, correct.
Again,
and total sugar is usually they're like 2 grams total of sugar in the whole package or something like that. Versus
they're a nice treat. They're still going to emit an insulin response.
Exactly.
But on a limited level. You got to eat.
So for those of you that normally would eat peach rings, They have Smart Sweets
peach rings. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really eat those. I'm not a huge gummy nut, but I like garlic stuffed olives. Yeah. I like a lot of rich fatty foods.
Yeah. And I don't eat them outside of the mountain usually.
Yeah.
That's my treat on the hill.
Yeah. But I do like caffeine in various forms. Tea, Lampers he's got an IV with coffee going in all day long.
Little drip system.
I do have, and I know it's not as ideal, but I do drink Mountain Ops Ignite.
Yeah.
I drink a few energy. Sometimes I'll do a Yeti energy drink, like a pre-workout, a couple times, maybe once a week.
Mm-hmm.
The creatine in it is, as I've gotten older, not as ideal for me. But Brad, I like a pick-me-up.
Right.
I like, a sort of 5-hour energy.
Hey, there was the study done way back when caffeine was invented. How much productivity became.
I think Rogan did that podcast on like that dude, that caffeine expert.
Yeah, I can't remember his name now.
And he was like, the world's like trajectory into
where everything
technology and growth was like kind of here, and then caffeine came, and human beings became 10 times more
more productive.
There's something about it. I'm sure it's not ideal. I have tried to cut back on my caffeine consumption, and I try to follow the rules that Andrew Huberman mentioned on a show not too long ago. I don't consume caffeine till I've been awake for at least an hour.
Right.
And I also, first thing, I get sunlight on my eyes, walking around. I don't consume caffeine for an hour to an hour and a half. And then I do that, and I get all my caffeine intake done by 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to have any caffeine after that.
Yeah, right.
And I'm finding that I'm sleeping way better.
Right.
Way deeper sleep at night. And I just feel better too. There's an urge to consume caffeine at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, post-workout.
Totally screws up
want some
your
energy.
Circadian rhythm, like bad.
Yeah, I don't know if it's bad. When I'm tired, I'm tired. But I will say that the caffeine doesn't seem to be doing much for me that late in the day. It's like, well, I drank the caffeine because I was feeling tired, and I still felt tired.
Right.
So it's like, And then I do feel a little restless, or I don't sleep as deep.
Right.
So I'm thinking, I'm not getting the super benefit that I
and I wonder
used
if it has
to get
to do
out of
with like the
caffeine.
melatonin levels that your body's trying to create, but the caffeine's fighting it. I don't know. No idea. I'm not a doctor. I leave it to those guys.
I have heard the explanation for it, but I don't remember it. But anyway, like I said, those are just some stuff. I hope you found the podcast useful. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, follow the channel if you like it. Check out Andrew Huberman's podcast with Dr. Lustig if you're curious, if you want to get the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to bring it forward to the audience, just tell you what we've been learning, kind of my thoughts as I try to improve my own fitness and work on my own fitness journey. Figured you guys would get some use out of it. Let us know what you think in the comment section. If you got questions, drop them down there. If you got podcast ideas or some things you'd like us to dive into, react to, interview, just leave them down there, and we'll just keep doing, trying to bring value to you. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next show. Stay gritty.